The Battle of Hoover Dam from Fallout New Vegas pits the New California Republic against Caesar's Legion. But what if the NCR had some real opposition? No more mowing down toga-clad slaves. No more Legionnaire LARPers with machetes. Let's have them defend their objective against a proper raid force and replace Kaiser's cosplayers with the 75th Ranger Regiment. The goal of this video is simple: to explore how a modern military unit might go about seizing the Hoover Dam from the NCR defenders, and discuss the planning, tactics, and equipment that would go into such a mission. To deliver this, I'll sequence it in the format, roughly, of a 5-paragraph op-ord template, and we'll wrap up the video with an animated simulation on how this battle might play out. Timestamps on screen, if you wish to skip ahead. Before we jump into recreating the battle, we first have to understand the battle. So here's a quick recap of the game. Fallout New Vegas is a post-apocalyptic first-person shooter/RPG set in the American Southwest, specifically the Mojave region. The game takes place in 2281, over 200 years after a nuclear war has ravaged the United States and turned everything into a radioactive wasteland. You play as a courier who gets shot in the head at the start of the game, survives, and immediately becomes the most influential person in the entire Mojave wasteland. A key plot point of the story is the Hoover Dam. It's still intact, it's providing water and power, and it's key terrain for the many factions that fight over it. Some of these include the NCR, or the New California Republic. These are bureaucratic West Coast expansionists, and they yearn for pre-war democracy. Next up is Caesar's Legion, a Roman-inspired militant group, not afraid of a bit of ultra-violence, with a penchant for machetes and slave labor. Next up is Mr. House, who is a pre-war Vegas CEO who rules the strip with an army of robots from his cryo sleep bed pod thing. You as the player, you can side with any of these factions and many others in helping them achieve their goals, or you can simply do what you want and overthrow them all. Which is really the beauty of Fallout New Vegas. You can play as yourself, you can be a goodie, you can be a baddie, or whatever character you choose to play as. So when it comes to the Hoover Dam, there's really two major battles. The first battle takes place in 2277, and this is prior to the events of the game. The second battle is the one you come across in-game, and that takes place in 2282. And this battle from the game, it depends obviously entirely on your choices as the player. Because of this video will focus on the first battle, where the NCR held the dam against a Legion horde approaching from the east. I'm not going to go into a deep dive on the first battle itself, just really cover what's important to know, but if you wish to get more into the nitty-gritty lore, there's a cool video by this chap here, Tonic, which will give you a more detailed breakdown if you so wish. The Legion attack from the east, and they have numerical superiority to the NCR, but they're arguably less well equipped. They have some initial success in their assault. They bypass some of these surface defensive positions, pretty much manage to swarm over the defensive lines, but they eventually get bogged down by NCR sniper fire, which is targeting their key leadership and killing their frontline commanders. They manage to punch through the rear of the defensive lines, which causes a brief NCR rout, but they eventually get greedy, they overcommit, and they get baited into Boulder City, which the NCR blows up in a city-borne IED explosion, which pretty much wipes out the entire Legion's elite main body and allows the NCR to lodge a successful counterattack to reclaim the dam. So while the Legion are outgunned, they could have potentially won, but their attack really failed due to a lack of a clear limit of exploitation, which led to them being over-eager in their pursuit of the NCR and effectively falling for a trap, instead of consolidating their forces on the objective. Or you should just go play the game. It's old, but it's good. Part 1. Situation. Enemy forces. The key leader of the NCR army is General Lee Oliver. He's known for his conventional, sometimes overly rigid tactics, which is a cause of frustration for some of the more unconventional and elite units within the NCR. Next up is Chief Hanlon, head of the NCR Rangers, which is a more elite outfit than the standard NCR troopers. He provides strategic oversight on how the Rangers are used, but he also personally leads the deployment of the Rangers at the tactical level. Oliver more pushes for static defense through massing his forces and holding terrain in key locations, whereas Hanlon is more an advocate for mobility and reconnaissance and not really holding terrain in the sense that General Oliver wishes to. The NCR numbers aren't explicitly mentioned in-game, but if you listen to some of the dialogue, it suggests that the first battle was quite substantial and involved a main defensive force with numerous specialist subunits. We also know with certainty that there were 107 NCR killed in action, as seen on the Boulder City Memorial Plaque. So based on the scale of the battle as it's recounted by characters in-game, game, we can assess as approximately a battalion worth of NCR holding the objective, consisting of approximately 420 troopers, 90 rangers, 24 first recon snipers, and approximately 6 NCR heavy troopers. On top of this, there's also dedicated support personnel such as engineers and medics and some other non-combat staff. If we tally up these approximated force elements, it gives us around 600 NCR personnel total, which is equivalent to a downsized modern military battalion. It's also important to note they're not entirely concentrated at the dam, but they're spread across an area defensive plan that includes combat outposts, reconnaissance screens, and roving patrols on the western bank of the Colorado River. When it comes to their equipment, while they're poorly equipped by a present-day military standard, they're comparatively well kitted out by apocalypse standards. With that being said, a lot of the issues that an army faces are amplified in the post-apocalyptic world. Their supply lines are difficult to sustain, their weapons are mostly pre-war kit, and the maintenance on said weapons is relentless and ongoing. And to add to all this, NCR soldiers aren't fully standardized in terms of the equipment and weapons they're issued. So in many cases, they simply use whatever they can get their hands on. Okay, so breaking down some of the key units within the NCR. First up are the regular troopers. So these guys are the bog standard infantry grunt of the New California Republic. They have varying levels of training, and they're primarily used to hold static defensive positions and do limited security patrols. The primary weapon of the NCR and most of the troopers is the service rifle. This is a Franken AR variant weapon featuring hideous wooden furniture, but not all of them have access to the service rifle, and some can be found carrying varmint rifles, caravan shotguns, or the single shotgun. They also have access to some sidearms such as the 9mm pistol, the 10mm pistol, and they also in some cases have light ballistic armor and helmets. The next key unit are the first reconnaissance snipers. Now these guys are a more advanced reconnaissance unit, and they were instrumental in the first battle in targeting and destroying some of the key leaders within the Caesar's Legion assault force. They're specialized in precision marksmanship, and accordingly they're commonly equipped with the sniper rifle or the scoped hunting rifle from the game. Next up are the NCR Rangers. The Rangers are a step up from the regular NCR troopers, being a volunteer-only force, and they're considered a more elite formation. They're vastly better trained than the standard troopers, but in the battle they're seemingly integrated among the regular NCR troopers, presumably to boost morale and potentially provide extra leadership. The Rangers can commonly be seen carrying the hunting rifle, the sniper rifle, the assault carbine, the marksman carbine, and of course big iron. They're slightly more protected than the regular troopers, wearing Ranger patrol armor and cool hats, but ultimately this armor is really just old repurposed riot gear, so it's not great in terms of stopping modern projectiles. Next are the veteran Rangers. So this crew is an elite within the elite. They have smaller numbers and even more superior training and experience to the standard Ranger. They're uniquely trained as both assaulters and snipers, and they can be spotted easily by their iconic black Ranger combat armor and helmet. In terms of their weapons, they have access to pretty much all the aforementioned small arms, but more importantly, they are frequently seen carrying the AMR or anti-material rifle, and also more potent sidearms such as the hunting revolver. Their combat helmet with the red lenses, it looks cool, but this base model has no night vision. In the game, only the rare Desert Ranger combat armor has the built-in night vision, but this is extremely rare loot even for the player, so it's much less likely that even an elite veteran ranger has access to the night vision equipped combat helmet. As a side note, I think it's funny that the veteran rangers are the ones who have the AMR and not the first recon snipers, but knowing how the military works, this is probably nothing more than garden variety inter-unit rivalry. The first recon guys be like, hey man, we're a sniper unit, could we get some of those AMRs? Yeah, nah, these are ours. What do you need them for? Get your own. The final NCR class type of note are the heavy troopers. These guys are unique as the only ones in the NCR who really carry any sort of support or heavy weapons, including the light machine gun, the incinerator, and the minigun. They are also seen wearing the T-45 Delta power armor. Now, there's no mention in-game that they explicitly had power armor at the first battle of Hoover Dam, and the NCR power armor was salvaged from their previous battles with the Brotherhood of Steel, a different faction from the game, particularly during Operation Sunburst, which took place at Helios 1 only a year prior in 2276. I could argue that there's no evidence of power armor at the first battle, as it's never mentioned by any of the in-game characters who routinely talk about the battle, but there are 6 shown in-game at the second battle, so I'll give them benefit of the doubt that they had some power armor during the first battle of the Hoover Dam. While these power armor users pose a threat, they're not invincible, and they can be defeated with sufficient small arms fire, particularly from modern ammunition used by the Rangers ranges, such as the M855A1, the Mark 363, or the Mark 318 5.56mm rounds. Aside from rifle fire, grenades and explosives are also a solid choice against power armor users, as there are gaps in the joints that are not covered by plating or metal, and these are vulnerable to fragmentation. These weaknesses are exacerbated by the poor condition of their second-hand suits. And to highlight this, there's a really cool video by this channel, Sodas, who has these cool animated videos on Operation Sunburst, which also shows the effectiveness of standard projectiles against power armor, particularly the AMR. The Fallout TV series also makes a point of demonstrating that power armor has weak spots that can be penetrated by armor-piercing rounds. And in the show, this is shown using the more advanced T60 series of power armor. This scene from the show is sick, don't get me wrong, but it's really just the Brotherhood of Steel assaulters becoming bots for 2 minutes so the ghoul can have another Billy Badass moment.
I bet that outfit makes y'all feel like a big man, don't it?
Tactically, it makes no sense. They're absolutely frenzied in the middle of an ongoing assault on a heavily contested objective, and have until this point pretty much been killing on sight. But then the ghoul whistling in the darkness is enough to get their attention, stop everything, and stare at him like they're in a trance, despite him being visibly and obviously armed and making an ominous speech about the weak points of power armor. It's a fun scene, but utterly at odds with what would really occur.
I bet that outfit makes y'all feel like a big man.
Clear. Anyway, aside from the flaws with the power armor, it also critically lacks night vision, which is something exploitable by the Rangers in the close confines fighting of the dam interior. These heavy troopers are typically held in reserve and used for VIP protection at the NCR command post. Center of gravity. In context of the Battle of Hoover Dam, the NCR are essentially a light infantry battalion, and as such they don't really have a singular asset or characteristic that can be narrowed down as the one locus of their power. So their center of gravity really is their integrated defensive network of the dam itself. And in this center of gravity analysis, I'll also explain the critical capabilities, their critical requirements, and the critical vulnerabilities that are linked to the center of gravity. What are those? Good question, glad you asked. Critical capabilities are primary abilities that are essential for the mission. Critical requirements are essential resources and conditions required by the critical capabilities, and critical vulnerabilities are aspects of the critical requirements vulnerable to attack. Doesn't make sense? Can't say I blame you. It's military doctrine and it's boring and confusing, but let me explain. Critical capabilities. Firstly, their command and control. Having this strong centralized command means their defensive plan is well coordinated. They can use triggers and they can time key events. They also have layered defense in depth, and using multiple positions with mutually supporting arcs of fire gives depth to their overall defensive plan. Combine this with their joint force integration. So they use troopers, rangers, snipers, and heavies all working together to complement the strengths and weaknesses of each of those unit types. Next up is sustainment. In any defensive battle, having enough ammunition, stores, and rations are essential if you plan on staying in one place for any period of time. With the NCR having held this objective for years up until this point, they've been able to stockpile all these resources, which gives them the ability to weather a sustained assault. Similarly, having held the terrain for so long gives them a boost to their situational awareness. They pretty much have the locals' advantage of the physical location and all its strengths. This means they'd be intuitively aware of the surrounding terrain, and they have control of the entire west bank of the Colorado River through outposts and roving patrols, which give them additional depth to their security, to their flanks, and to their rear. They're also shown to be versed in counter mobility. This is through their use of physical obstacles and critically explosives, and this is used to both delay and attrit attacking forces. We can see this through some of the physical obstacles they have erected on the dam itself, and also through their use of the demolitions in the Boulder City explosive trap. Next is their critical requirements, or what they need. Their coordination and command and control isn't much good unless they have reliable communications. This is between local positions, and more critically, in such a centralized command relationship that they have from the HQ location to all these defensive points. Next up is a steady ammunition supply, which they can achieve through their pre-positioned caches and also using runners, both prior to and during the battle itself. Trained marksmen are essential for them to be able to apply precision fires and target key enemy command commanders during the attack, and also trained NCOs and officers in order to maintain unit cohesion and discipline under any prolonged attack. Knowledge of the dam layout is also important to the individual defenders. They have to understand their primary defensive positions, any secondary or fallback positions, and then also what routes are protected during any withdrawals. And finally, functioning power, the infrastructure systems that light the exterior areas and then also the interior spaces, and also sustain the operations of the dam's facilities. Next up are their critical vulnerabilities, or those assets or characteristics that are plausibly vulnerable to attack. They're painfully lacking in ISR assets. They have no drones, no radars, no thermal imaging or anything of the sort for early warning. Further to this, they physically have no large-scale troop forces to the east of the Colorado River, which gives them no situational awareness on the impending approach of any forces. Similarly is their complete lack of night vision, and this painfully limits their effectiveness in low light or night operations. Night vision does exist in the game. There's a unique weapon called the Rat Slayer, which is a rifle fitted with a night vision scope, but this is rare loot in the game even for the player, much like the NCR night vision helmet. And in my time playing the game, I've never come across an NCR member at the dam who is equipped with this weapon. Next is the isolation of their command. If the NCR troopers are cut off from the command post, either physically or by communication, they're less likely to continue fighting independently, or at least be able to creatively solve tactical problems in pursuit of the mission outcomes, which is one of the downsides to a very rigid, centralized command structure. As it is a physical location, they have predictable and static locations, and these known positions can then be mapped and pre-targeted or even easily bypassed by any assaulting force. They also have insufficient support weapons, and while they do have ample light caliber small arms, there's no crew-served medium machine guns, heavy machine guns, or mortars, for example, which makes it challenging for them to suppress or disrupt the advance of enemy assaulters. And finally, their junior commanders, which in some cases are inexperienced or untrained, especially at the lower level, and will therefore be lacking in initiative or even decisiveness in the absence of higher commanders' orders. And this weak junior level command may lead to positions being more easily overwhelmed than they would otherwise be with confident junior leaders. Friendly forces. Now that everyone has been brought up to speed on the NCR defenders, let's meet the attacking force. So the Ranger Regiment are a specialized direct action raid force. They focus on large-scale joint forcible entry in highly contested environments, and they can force project and execute this pretty much anywhere on the globe. The Ranger Regiment falls under the umbrella of USASOC, and the regiment consists of 3 line battalions, the Regimental Specialist Troops Battalion, the Ranger Military Intelligence Battalion, and Ranger Reconnaissance Company, which is their JSOC strategic ISR element. Why the Rangers? Well, first of all, the Rangers have real-world precedent for seizing major infrastructure under fire. As an example, in April 2003, 3rd Battalion, the 75th Ranger Regiment, along with C Squadron from Delta Force, seized Haditha Dam in Iraq. The dam was deemed a strategic objective. It provided power, it controlled flooding, and it allowed movement across the Euphrates River. The Iraqi army force defending it included approximately 120 soldiers on site, with up to 6,000 in the immediate vicinity, plus tanks and infantry fighting vehicles. The Rangers had a force of approximately 150, and they conducted a night assault. And in clearing the dam over many days, they cleared hundreds of rooms under fire. They faced human wave attacks, RPG ambushes, and sniper fire from the Iraqi army. And the operation was largely a success. The dam was secured, the infrastructure was preserved, and heavy enemy losses were inflicted on the Iraqi army. So it's a real-world example of how a small elite force like the Rangers can clear, seize, and then hold complex infrastructure against numerically superior forces. All of this making them not only a credible, but historically appropriate force for the hypothetical seizure of the Hoover Dam in Fallout New Vegas. Order of battle. So like Haditha Dam, we're going with Charlie Company, 3rd Battalion from the 75th Ranger Regiment. And with the composite force tailored for this task, it's coming to about 150 personnel, including attachments. 6 personnel give or take in company headquarters, and then 3 platoons each of 39 men. Company headquarters consists of a company commander, usually a captain, a company sergeant major, a JTAC, a RTO, an S2 or intelligence representative, and a UAV or electronic warfare operator. Each platoon is then split into into 3 rifle squads with a platoon headquarters of approximately 5 personnel. Each squad is broken down further into 2 fire teams, each fire team consisting of a team leader, a rifleman, a grenadier, and a machine gunner. The standard rifle for the Rangers is the M4A1 URGI. Depending on the task, the rifleman may at times also swap out their M4 for a Mark 17 or Scar Heavy if the mission has need for a designated marksman role. The grenadiers are equipped with the M320 40mm launcher, and the machine gunners will use either the M249 SAW or the Knights Armament LAMG. The Rangers in need of a sidearm will be issued the Mark 27 9mm Glock, and being a raid force, they have access to a broad suite of explosives and demolitions, such as fragmentation grenades, flashbangs, smoke, thermobaric grenades, and even M72 thermobaric launchers. The company weapon squad consists of 7 personnel and has a squad leader and then 3 gun pairs, most commonly carrying the M240 Lima medium machine gun. The Ranger Regiment has a variety of specialists that are usually held at the battalion level, and they are attached or detached as needed to the companies on a case-by-case basis. But specifically tailored for this mission, the Hoover Dam battle, first up will be a sniper section consisting of approximately 7 personnel. This would look something like a section leader with 3 sniper pairs equipped with either the Mark 11, Mark 21, Mark 22, or the Barrett M107 for extreme range or anti-materiel targets. I'm shamelessly biased towards snipers, having done a bit of sniping back in my day, so get headshot with an ad break and check out the CSRC pocket guide. It's a nifty little ebook I made. It takes the form of a traditional sniper data book, but it's aimed at the humble but mighty rifleman. You don't need to be Billy Singh or Bob Lee swagger to understand it. It's focused on practical information that you can apply and practice on your next trip to the range. So if you're looking to level up your extended range marksmanship game, check it out. Or if you just want to support the channel, it's a good way to get something in exchange for your hard-earned cashies. Thanks. Back to the Rangers. Next up is the heavy breach section. While all the Rangers in the platoon are capable of dynamic breaching, the breacher specialists are called upon for very heavy or complicated breaches or when specific expertise is needed. Next is the K9 team, consisting of approximately 7 personnel, 1 squad leader, and then 3 pairs consisting of 3 dogs. These assault dogs are affectionately referred to as fur missiles in a lot of the military community and are used by the Rangers to supplement their close-range lethality in urban combat and CQB environments by sniffing out hard-to-get-to or barricaded enemy personnel. Finally, the aforementioned company UAV operators have access to both unarmed surveillance drones and offensive systems such as FPV drones. A quick note on night vision. All the Rangers can fight in the dark, both the company rifle squads and the support weapon systems. This is typically done through active aiming by using the infrared laser attached to their individual weapons, or by passive aiming, which involves aiming through their night vision through their day optic sight of their individual weapon. And the advantage to the latter is that you don't telegraph your position by turning on your infrared lasers to an enemy who might also be equipped with night vision. I'm not going to get too much more down in the weeds in terms of their kits, but if you're interested, there is a terrific video by Battle Order, which goes in detail over the Ranger platoon. Center of gravity. In this case, as a light infantry battalion, much like the NCR, there's no one clear asset or characteristic, but contextual to the setting, terrain, and the opposition in this case, the center of gravity is the Rangers' ability to execute complex offensive operations as one cohesive force. That is, they can have multiple platoons attacking multiple points under support from enablers, all tightly coordinated. To use a cringe-inducing military platitude, but one that's true, they are brilliant at the basics of light infantry tactics. This is exactly how they took the Haditha Dam in Iraq, and it's how they would take the Hoover Dam in Fallout. All the equipment they have and the advanced weapons, they're important, but it's really the Ranger Regiment's relentless training and experience in conducting these raid mission profiles that is the focus of their power. Critical capabilities. Firstly, their sensor overmatch. The ancillaries they have supporting them, like night vision, thermal, fusion, passive aiming, all gives them superior situational awareness to an adversary like the NCR who don't have these systems. In short, it means they can detect the NCR in any terrain or context before the NCR can detect them. Next up is coordination. Their 3 separate maneuver platoons can conduct simultaneous and independent breaches if needed, all supported by an all-informed radio network. Precision targeting and suppression. Sniper Overwatch and their UAS systems provide real-time information, covering fire, and surgical targeting of key enemy weapon systems and personnel. Their machine gun teams enable sustained suppression through their tripod-mounted medium machine guns, and their thermal and night optics mean they can provide effective engagement even out to extended distances, even by night. Their breaching teams and training means they can get controlled entry into hardened structures and tunnels, and by using explosive breaches they can create entry points through otherwise impassable areas. That enhances their surprise. Next up is their CQB expertise, which they are ruthlessly trained in. They can shoot faster and more accurately, move more aggressively, and integrate offensive aids such as flashbangs, fragmentation grenades, and smoke to dominate their enemies in close combat. And finally, ISR superiority. Through reconnaissance, snipers, and their UAV operators, they can really map out the enemy position in terms of their static locations and any roving patrols or hardened points. Critical requirements. First up, they must have secure infiltration routes, such as concealed approach to the objective. In any raids, but particularly in the Special Operations raid, retaining surprise as long as possible is critical. Further to this, their company headquarters has to maintain real-time communications across all 3 assault platoons and detachments. While the platoons can fight independently if they're empowered with the mission, orchestrating the larger company goal still needs this real-time control through communication. Next up is tempo. Like surprise, speed is another principle of special operations critical for particularly raids. Speed is important for a few reasons. It catches the defenders off guard, and also speed during the assault prevents the raid team getting bogged down, which would in turn allow any defenders to regroup, counterattack, or summon further external support. They also require confirmed intelligence on the layout of the objective, preferably in the way of detailed maps or satellite images of enemy emplacements. Next up is a period of darkness. By conducting these operations exclusively at night, the Rangers can really leverage their night vision goggles, their thermal optics, and it really gives them a marked advantage over less trained or less equipped foes. For this reason, it's in the best interest of the Rangers to execute their missions quickly so they're not left still fighting in daylight. Finally, post-raid sustainment. That is, once the objective has been secured, is when you have to start thinking about resupply, prisoner transfer, or casevac, which all require support from external units on completion of the raid. Critical vulnerabilities. Manpower. The trouble with a small force is you have limited available reserves. This translates as having less flexibility to adapt to friction on the battlefield, and at some point you will run out of the ability to secure numerous locations while continuing the assault. Any gaps in ISR, for example, subterranean areas which might not be covered by surveillance, and in these cases, it's difficult to confirm the enemy dispositions below the surface. Complex terrain such as the interior corridors, vertical spaces, and the turbine rooms of the dam all create blind spots and choke points, and therefore require a substantial amount of time and manpower to thoroughly clear. Early compromise. Linked to what we were talking about earlier, being detected prior to launching their assault leads to a massive loss of surprise. The so what of this, it allows the defenders to rally and generally better prepare themselves for the attack to come. Mission creep, which is basically seeing your task morph beyond what it initially intended or set out to do. While the Rangers might be tasked to seize the dam, they will lack the resources to hold it for an extended period of time, and as such, the Ranger assault force will need to hand over to another unit for long-term security. And finally, heavy weapons rules of engagement. Noting that the dam needs to be captured intact and functional, heavy weapons such as Carl Gustavs, mortars, heavy machine guns, and automatic grenade launchers all pose a risk to damaging the critical infrastructure or equipment of the dam, which means that they'll have to rely on their lighter support weapons like medium machine guns for their suppression fire missions. So before moving on, what are some of the other differences between a post-apocalyptic army and a present-day one? If we look at the NCR, they live a hard life in a wasteland. They're probably used to austerity. This hard life means they are psychologically hardened. But as we find out in the game, they're not immune to being routed. Physically as well, they're likely suffering from ongoing malnourishment, dehydration, illness and disease, radiation poisoning, and accordingly are probably physically weaker in terms of strength. Not to mention there would be conditions impacting their senses, such as sight and hearing loss being common ailments. In terms of resources as well, in a world where everything is scarce, such as ammunition, it's difficult to train. Live fire marksmanship training is probably rare. Bullets would be at an absolute premium. Combined with their lack of commonality in weapon systems and ammunition means that they are probably not getting as much trigger time as they would need. By comparison, we have the 75th Ranger Regiment. Their training focuses on what they call the Big Five: marksmanship, physical training, medical training, small unit tactics, and mobility. As a modern special operations unit, they are corn-fed units and in peak physical fitness in terms of their strength and overall bill of health. And this would be courtesy of world-class strength and conditioning programs and nutrition plans. The Rangers would also have near limitless ammunition in which to train their marksmanship across all their weapons, be it pistol, rifle, machine gun, or sniper weapons. Terrain. The broader operating environment is the Mojave Wasteland, which spans across the American Southwest. The Hoover Dam straddles the Colorado River, and it's split over Arizona and Nevada. Boulder City is the nearest town, and New Vegas is approximately 50 kilometers to the west. Going over the dam layout, and note that this is referencing what we can access in-game, so it may vary slightly from how the first battle went down 4 years prior, but most of the large infrastructure would have been the same. First up, the surface or external areas. East side is Arizona and the west side is Nevada, with the Dam Crest Road connecting the two. On top of the dam are 4 prominent towers, the eastmost of which is, however, destroyed. These towers have rooftop access, making them apt for snipers and marksmen, and they also have tunnel access into the subterranean infrastructure. The intake towers, which is these island dome things on the top side of the dam, and the power plant buildings, both on the east and the west side, which are these long buildings which run along the bottom side of the dam. Now, it's important to note the east side is decayed and unoccupied, and for whatever reason is not a factor in the game. You can't even access this area. However, the west side is what holds General Oliver's command post, the control room, and the NCR barracks. The round circle up the top here on the western side is the Visitors Center, and this is the building that gives access to the subterranean area. The spillway are these long flanking building ramp looking things, and there's one on both the Nevada and Arizona side. If we do a bit of Google Maps magic, we can determine it's about 800 meters from the Legion camp to the NCR sniper nest mentioned in the first battle, and approximately 600 meters from the Legion camp to the center of the dam. These positions will become more important later on in the plan. Finally, the anti-aircraft cannon. Now, this appears to be loosely modeled on an old US Army 3-inch gun, and it's capable of engaging both air and ground targets. This thing is weird because it clearly works, as in one of the missions in the game you can use it to assassinate the NCR president, but it's not clear if it was present or functional during the first battle, or why the NCR don't simply use it to bombard the extremely obvious and extremely in range Legion camp. Next up are the subterranean areas. So in the game, to get below deck, there are a few different points of entry through the towers and the visitors center, but which one of these you can use depends on which faction you have sided with. Noting that we are replacing the Legion, and in-game their only available access point is through the visitors center, we'll do the same. The first underground area is the offices. The offices contain the NCR barracks, recreation rooms, officers' wardrooms, accommodation areas, storage areas, classrooms, and even toxic waste disposal. But the main space of importance is the control room. The control room provides access to all the dam electrical and mechanical functions, and most critically, lighting. More on that later. The next underground structure are the power plant buildings. Power plants 1 through to 4 are a continuous series of high ceiling hall type rooms. There's only 2 door entry points from the external side on the dam floor level, and inside the power plants consist of a ground floor holding terminals and large turbines, and 2 tiers of upper observation decks with catwalks running across the space. The power plants are all linked through door access on both the ground floor and the first tier, which makes them a pretty complex environment to thoroughly clear in terms of close quarters combat. And finally, Oliver's command post is the furthest room at the end of Power Plant 4. Next up, when doing your terrain analysis, a common acronym is to use OCOCA. This changes depending on if you're British, Australian, or American military, but it's a combination of these letters. First up is observation. The surrounding natural terrain offers high ground vantage points which let one overlook the dam infrastructure, and these can be used offensively in terms of reconnaissance or sniper fire, or defensively such as the NCR NCR do in the case of their sharpshooters. In the game, the Caesar's Legion main camp is on the high ground to the east and in plain sight of the dam, covering concealment. There's not much in the way of vegetation, and most of the concealment is afforded only by the terrain. The man-made hard points offers cover to the defenders on the dam surface, such as small sandbag walls which provide fighting positions and some sort of protection that the NCR can bound between during any fighting withdrawals. Obstacles. The Colorado River and surrounding cliffs are the primary geographic obstacles hindering any approach to the dam. What's left of the roads approaching are also natural choke points. There are some man-made barricades and makeshift walls which divide the dam, and these can slow any assaulters on the surface dam crest road. And in the underground fight, rooms and tunnels are very easily covered by fire and will slow down the movement of any attackers. Key terrain. In this case is the Visitors Center building. It's a hardened reinforced structure. It also covers the western avenue of approach, and anyone who controls the Visitors Center means they control the surface road access from the west side and also controls the access points to get underground into the offices, the power plants, the control rooms, and the barracks below. Avenues of approach. The surfaced crest road is the main approach from both the east and the west. While I mentioned there are side entrances to the western power plants, this involves roping down over 200 meters of cliffs, or somehow swimming or boating across the Colorado River, which is in this context made further problematic because of radiation, and also mutated creatures like the disgusting lake lurks, which the Rangers could easily dispatch on their approach to the objective, but doing so would needlessly risk compromise. Another option in terms of avenues of approach is to potentially airlift onto the objective, but this is obviously made risky by the anti-aircraft gun and also the lack of serviceable landing zones due to the rocky and outcroppy nature of the terrain. This would mean the Rangers would have to fast rope onto the objective and leave the helicopters dangerously exposed to small arms for an extended period during their insertion. So helicopters do give advantages for any assaulting force, particularly for special operations guys, but they're not without their inherent risk, both to the personnel using them and the mission. And this has been shown throughout history. When you have helicopters, it's easy to get tunnel visioned onto just how to integrate them into your plan instead of focusing on the mission itself. This is something that Pete Glaber, who's a former Delta Force colonel, discusses in his excellent book, The Mission, the Men and Me, to the point that he goes on to say that he would often enact a no helicopters policy when planning reconnaissance or raid type missions. So with that being said, the Rangers could potentially do an offset insertion and land the helicopters away from the objective on the western side of the river, but this is also complicated by those aforementioned NCR patrols and also the outposts which are littered all along the western bank. Long story short, this means that a ground approach from the east is the only viable avenue of approach to the objective, which is going to see the Rangers going straight up the guts with plenty of smoke. Civilians and infrastructure. Importantly, the integrity of the dam must be preserved. All the critical systems within the control room and power plants have to be captured intact, including the computers, the gate controls, power distribution panels, generators, transformers, and turbines. There are no civilians on the objective, however, the NCR does have engineers and medics who may be unarmed if present and must be factored into the rules of engagement accordingly. Part 2. Mission. Military mission statements typically consist of who, what, where, when, and why, and as such, the Rangers mission statement might look a little something like: Charlie Company 275 is to seize the Hoover Dam no later than D plus 24 hours in order to deny NCR control of the Colorado River and enable subsequent operations in the Mojave area. Part 3. Execution. Concept of operations. The Rangers are specialists at raiding, which is itself a specific tactical task. The doctrinal definition of a raid is a variation of an attack to temporarily seize an objective with a planned withdrawal. By way of examples, this might involve capturing key enemy personnel or equipment, or destroying vital assets or infrastructure. Raids are broken into 5 specific phases: infiltrate, isolate, launch the surprise attack, secure the objective, and withdraw. And I'll go through these phases in detail. Phase 1. Infill. So this phase sees both the approach to the objective and the ISR shaping operations. Using their drones, the Rangers will confirm the enemy static positions, any enemy commanders or leadership, and the first reconnaissance sniper position on the hill to the west. Simultaneously to this, the company is making a silent foot approach from the east under the cover of darkness before consolidating in Assembly Area, or AA, Lonesome Road. I'm handwave cheating on the insertion here, but let's just say, like the Legion, the Rangers have control of the east side of the Colorado, and how they ended up 200 years in the future in this area of operations is a matter for your imagination. Phase 2. Isolate. This phase would normally involve establishing blocking positions around the objective, preventing both enemy withdrawal and counterattack. But the aforementioned complexities regarding the helicopter insertion and the Colorado River hinders any such preliminary actions on this particular objective in this particular terrain. So instead, this phase focuses on the force separation of the two main groups, the support by fire team and the assaulters, as the machine gunners, snipers, and UAS operators move to and occupy SPF gun runner. The assault force moves into the forming up point and posture themselves for the commencement of the surprise attack. Phase 3. The assault. This focuses on the clearance of the dam surface crest road and seizing an entry point to the lower dam levels, particularly that visitors center above the western power plant. In some of the planning session live streams for this video, some of the members also pointed out that this is where the NCR might try and get creative and try and smash the SPF with the anti-aircraft gun. So part of this initial engagement will also be to target that with either anti-material fire from the snipers or FPV drones. There's no easy way to get across to the western side, so the Rangers really just have to fight across the dam road using covering fire from the snipers and machine guns on the SPF hill. Once they clear the sniper towers and capture the intake towers, these give the lead platoons a further base of fire, which allows the depth platoons to conduct a forward passage of lines and then leapfrog to the point. And they can continue doing this until 3rd Platoon has reached the western side of the dam and secured an entry point into the subterranean area. It's simple and not very pretty, but it leverages surprise, speed, and the night vision overmatch of the Rangers. Phase 4. Secure. With the dam surface seized, Phase 4 is the underground clearance and the kill capture of the NCR command team. There's a brief tactical pause here to set more security on the surface before getting down into the guts. And to do so, the platoons are given further specific tasks. At this point, 3rd Platoon will split over rear security on the least likely avenue of approach, dam surface security covering the elevators and tunnels to prevent the NCR backstab, and establishing a prisoner holding area. At the same time, the SPF will be collapsing and occupying an overwatch position on the western side of the dam, the previous NCR 1st Recon sniper hill, and also the western approach road aimed to block any NCR counterattack. Company headquarters will also co-locate at the prisoner holding area, able to then tactically question any NCR prisoners for information and establish a casualty collection point. All this movement and rejigging has to be done pretty quick to not lose the initiative and the advantage of the initial assault. Once this has been done, this frees up 1st Platoon, 2nd Platoon, the heavy breaches, and K9 detachment for the underground fight, which is by far the most complex phase, and also the point where the Rangers will most likely sustain casualties. The complexity of this phase breaks it down into 2 further stages. Step 1 is to reach the dam control room, where they can shut down the interior lighting, and secondly, fighting their way down to the power plants and across to the NCR command post in order to kill/capture General Oliver, which will effectively cut the head off the NCR leadership and force the surrender of any remaining NCR holdouts. Phase 5 is the departure from the objective. Once the dam is secure, this will see the line platoons plus the supporting elements and company headquarters conduct a handover to their relief force. This has to be done sequentially to ensure there's a security footprint on the ground at all times, and it will see the responsibility of the dam handed from the Rangers to their relief force, including security of the dam and custody of any NCR prisoners, before the Rangers can exfil on foot to the east. The final part of the operations order is sustainment, or admin and log in Commonwealth Army parlance. In short, it's the equipment and stuff you bring on the mission. It's the bloody bullets, beans and bandages, and also command and signal. In the military, these are notoriously glossed over in favour of spending time briefing the plan, even though you shouldn't do this, because logistics is of course important, and there's endless platitudes telling you this. But they're not sexy, and certainly not enthralling YouTube viewing. So as is tradition, I'll blast through these quick time before the punters up the back fall asleep. Ammunition and explosives. A standard combat load is 210 rounds per man, or 730 round magazines. But given the lack of aerial resupply and potential for a sustained underground fight, 10 mags per man is prudent, with spares to be spread across platoon and company headquarters teams to keep the assaulters mobile. Grenadiers will carry 8 40mm rounds minimum, with a mixed load of high explosives, smoke and IR illumination. Machine gunners with their M249 or LAMGs will carry 800 rounds per man, and the weapon squad M240Ls in their sustained fire rolls will carry 1200 rounds per gun. Platoon level explosives will include the fragmentation, flashbang, smoke and thermobaric grenades as standard in their squad loadouts, and the heavy breaches need to ensure they bring the appropriate demo needed to breach the heavy steel doors which are found throughout the underground complex. Medical support. There's 1 medic per platoon, organic to each platoon headquarters. Casualty collection points during Phase 3 will be the eastern dam entry control point, and during Phase 4 it will shift to the large square next to the visitor center during the subterranean clearance. There's no casevac until the objective is secure, so any casualties have to be preserved on site. Any prisoners taken during the surface clearance are to be detained in place and then pushed to the depth platoon in the assault. And on completion of Phase 3, the prisoner holding area will be adjacent to the CCP near the visitor center. Command structure will see the company commander with overall tactical control and the company sergeant major in charge of coordination of any resupply and prisoner control. Encrypted communications for a company command, platoon internal, and administrative nets. This lets commanders discuss changes to the tactical situation, while platoon sergeants can coordinate casualties or prisoners on a separate net. Platoon leaders and the platoon RTOs have direct links to the SBF to designate targets, or direct switch fires or cut off as needed. Alternate means of communication include infrared strobes for identifying friendlies and marking the forward line of troops during the assault. Flares can be used for contingency signaling. Finally, good old-fashioned hand-arm signals can be used particularly during the infiltration when silence is at a premium. Finally, the key control measures used are 3 phase lines, which will be employed during Phase 3 to clearly articulate the progress of the dam assault. First up is Phase Line Prim, which is the eastern intake towers and the 1st platoon objective. Phase Line Nipton, the western intake towers and the 2nd platoon objective. And Phase Line Novak, the visitor center and western approach road, the 3rd platoon objective.
You've made your last delivery, kid. Sorry you got twisted up in this scene. From where you're kneeling must seem like an 18-carat run of bad luck. Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
The river has its secrets. The desert keeps its grace. The rangers walk in silence, and blood is all they crave.
War never changes.
Part 6. Simulation. The operation begins with a UAS scan of the objective, revealing the locations of the NCR troopers at the sandbag bunkers, who make up the bulk of the defence, the NCR Rangers, both marksmen on the towers and scattered among the ranks, and the 1st Recon snipers and veteran Rangers on their hilltop observation post. At this point, the NCR commanders and underground force are safe from aerial observation in the power plant and offices, but they'll be dealt with once the subterranean clearance starts. Next up, our friendly Ranger force, who, having completed their foot infiltration under the cover of darkness, are pre-positioned ready to spring their surprise attack. First, the SBF, consisting of the M240 Weapon Squad, Sniper Section, UAS Surveillance Det, and Company Headquarters, followed by 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Platoon, plus their platoon command teams, and K9 team and heavy breaches, all stacked in the FUP, ready to cross the line of departure. With the assault force and fire support ready, the attack can begin on command. The M240 teams open up with an extended burst, focusing their suppression on the NCR observation post, while the Ranger snipers engage the front line of the NCR defenders. Ideally, the assault force can creep as close as possible before this initiation, so the precision fire support of the snipers is less sketchy than having the machine guns engage on this tight angle to the friendlies. Some of the more squared away NCR would get some return fire going quickly, but them accurately shooting in the dark without night vision and thermals at over 300 meters is an exercise in hopes and dreams, so this would be harassing fire at best. Simultaneously to the machine guns opening up, the UAV operators deploy their explosive FPV drones to target the anti-aircraft cannon, destroying the heavy gun before it can be leveled at the SBF hilltop. The NCR begins taking casualties right off the bat, with the initial barrage of machine gun and sniper fire smashing the NCR 1st Recon hilltop and troopers on the eastern dam wall. As the Rangers make their break into the NCR positions and secure a foothold on the dam for the lead platoon, the narrow dam road means that no more than a squad can really lead the assault, but that also means the defenders in depth can't support the front line of contact. This relegates the combat on the dam wall to a battle of good old-fashioned infantry skills. He who moves, shoots, and communicates the fastest and most accurately wins. But with the gun skills and night vision of the Rangers handily outdoing the NCR, it's not long before they gain momentum and begin steamrolling down the road. As the assaulters clear the dam, the SBF continues suppressing the positions to their front, and the NCR snipers in depth, who, realising they're outgunned and outranged, withdraw down the reverse slope. Once the lead platoon clear the 1st sniper tower and the eastern intake towers, they're well positioned on the footbridges to provide additional support fire onto the rest of the dam. This is important as the angle of fire from the SBF gets tighter as the assault continues, meaning the assault force needs to provide its own suppression the further they advanced along the curve of the road. With 1st Platoon at phase line prim, this is the trigger for 2nd Platoon to conduct a forward passage of lines and take point on the assault, under the cover fire of the 1st Platoon baseline. As they fight fight their way across, it's critical they sustain the speed and aggression needed to keep the NCR on the back foot, particularly as there is a meagre amount of lighting on the dam surface that somewhat balances out the night vision advantage. The greatest threat are the NCR snipers on the elevated towers, but these can be peeled off their head glitch by the marksmen from 1st Platoon. At this stage, it's getting sketchy for the machine guns to continue suppressing this close to the forward line of assaulters, so the Rangers radio for switch fire, leaving only the snipers to engage threats in depth. With 2nd Platoon on point, their objective is to fight to and clear the western row of intake towers. At this point, some of the less dedicated NCR troopers begin to realise they're in a one-sided gunfight and opt to raise their hands in surrender to their green-eyed adversaries. Taking prisoners during battle can be spicy, as it removes Rangers from the fight to conduct hasty searches and pull security, but quickly pulling detainees to the depth squads means the lead squads can continue their assault with minimal disruption. Having reached phase line Nipton, 2nd Platoon establishes a base of fire orientated towards the visitor centre, as 3rd Platoon takes point for the home stretch. The SPF are pretty much ineffectual for this final leg, so can begin collapsing their position and leave the covering fire to 1st and 2nd Platoon marksmen occupying the towers. Approaching the visitor centre building, the NCR Rangers put up a decent fight, trying their best to prevent the attackers from securing a critical entry point to the underground area, but they're ultimately outmatched by the Rangers' night vision and superior combat marksmanship. Having reached the visitor centre, the assault force needs to reposture for phase 4, securing the underground infrastructure. There's a few moving parts to this, so a lot has to be done concurrently for maximum efficiency. First step is 3 platoons setting security, covering the western approach to watch for NCR reinforcements, the eastern approach in the unlikely event of an attack from the rear, and securing the towers. Simultaneously, the SPF is hustling from their old position to cross the dam and occupy a blocking position to the west, occupying the high ground that previously held the NCR snipers. This brings the heavy firepower of the snipers and machine guns to the most likely avenue of approach, and means the assault platoons can focus on the remainder of the clearance. With the SPF repositioned and the surface objective secure, the NCR prisoners and any casualties can be brought to the CCP on the hard standing next to the visitor centre, where company headquarters and the remainder of 3 platoon not involved in security can assist with casualty care and exploitation of the detainees. With security set, 1st Platoon, 2nd Platoon, the K9 team, and heavy breachers can leave their positions on the intake towers and stack for their breach into the visitor centre, leading to the subterranean infrastructure of the offices and power plants. So the offices are the first subterranean level, accessed through a staircase in the visitor centre building, and connect to the power plants, with the western row holding General Oliver and the NCR command post. The Rangers have to clear this area first to prevent being backstabbed in the power plants, while also reaching the control room in order to kill the power and own the darkness that follows. This subterranean clearance is more complex than the surface assaults, and the Rangers no longer have the luxury of their UAVs or fire support. On entry, immediately to their right is the access door to the power plant. This entry point has to be guarded during the clearance to prevent the NCR from counterattacking into the office space and hitting the Rangers from behind. And despite close quarters somewhat balancing the odds for the NCR, the tightly rehearsed drills and tactics of the Rangers lets them efficiently roll through the hallways and rooms of the offices while dispatching the defenders with relative ease. The rooms vary in size from toilets to science labs and larger spaces, with the NCR recreation room well suited as a casualty collection point or prisoner holding area. If any particularly stubborn NCR are dug in deep in the rooms, the K9 team can be called forward to unleash the combat assault dog to add a bit of extra lethality to the room floor combat. Pushing towards the control room, the Rangers come across the toxic waste room, and more concerningly, 2 NCR heavy troopers guarding the entrance. Even with their CQB advantage, the NCR heavies pose a significant threat to the Rangers, and this is most likely where they would take casualties. As advanced CQB training or not, the NCR heavy can hose rounds down the hallway towards the Rangers, bringing them to a halt. While the power armor can sponge bullet damage, they're not invincible, and with enough fragmentation grenades and concentrated 5.56 from their own light machine guns, the Rangers managed to vanquish the first heavy, and feeling loose, lobbed 40mm grenades up the hallway to kill the second. With an entry to the control room secure, the sealed fortified doors are a task for the heavy breachers, who rig their demolition charges under cover from the assaulters, and blast an entry point. Fighting through the NCR defenders in the control room, the Rangers regs the primary computer terminal, and the most tech-savvy systems operator among them powers down the lighting. With the offices now pitch black, the Rangers own the night with their PVS-31 Alpha night vision goggles, and leverage this advantage to clear the remainder of the structure. At this stage, there would likely be more enemy detainees, as the NCR trapped in the darkness would opt to surrender. These prisoners and any casualties are backloaded to the recreation room for initial exploitation before being moved back to the company headquarters on the surface. With the offices now cleared, the Rangers backtrack to the entry point and ready themselves for the breach into the power plant. The Western Power Plant building consists of 4 separate large rooms, connected by central doors. Each room has a central ground floor area with large turbines and control panels, and 2 tiers of balcony holding workspace and catwalks. The verticality multiplies the space that must be cleared of NCR, and the Rangers will have to be diligent in their movement and engagements to avoid cross-firing and potential blue-on-blue. Power Plant 2 and 4 have emergency exits to the exterior, which accesses the outside lower dam area. The Rangers make entry from the office, and set themselves on the second-tier balcony to provide a base of fire. The coordination between squads and platoons here is critical, to ensure that no one is advancing without their flanks protected, or moving into the line of fire of neighbouring squads. In general, when doing an attack involving a manoeuvre and a support element, the goal is to keep an L shape, with one platoon responsible for the ground floor moving down the long axis of the building, and the second platoon clearing the upper tiers on the west side of the building. With the power plants now pitch black, the night vision supremacy of the Rangers shines through, and their overwatch position lets them pick off the NCR with ease. But the NCR troopers in the power plant are General Oliver's elite ranks, and don't fold so easily, returning fire based on their local knowledge of the terrain, and what they can glimpse of the assaulting Rangers between muzzle flashes. The catwalks and stairways don't leave much space to move, so the upper Ranger platoon begins peeling towards the western balcony, freeing up space for the lower platoon to take their place at the entry point. With the Rangers dominating the high ground, it's preferable they attack by fire, and do most of the killing while holding their positions from the balconies, which, if this is done correctly, would be akin to the shower scene from The Rock. Rest in peace, SEAL Commander Anderson. But eventually the short side platoon would have to work their way downstairs to clear the dark nooks and crannies, particularly around the pillars and in the side alcoves. With the first power plant clear, power plant 2 essentially receives the same treatment, one platoon acting as a base of fire from the short axis of the room, and a second securing the upper balcony on the long side of the room. The key difference is the exit door leading to the river, which offers an escape route to any less disciplined NCR who take the opportunity to squirt. But their escape from the power plant isn't necessarily problematic, as it lowers the likelihood of them embracing their fate and going out hard, swinging away in the darkness. And they can simply be picked off by the 3rd platoon marksman above on the dam wall. Barring a miracle for the NCR like the power coming back on, the remainder of power plant 2 is light work for the Rangers. And given as power plant 3 is near identical in layout, it's fair to say it would be taken down in a similar manner. I see no value in beating a dead NCR pack horse, so let's skip ahead to the final compartment, where things get a bit prickly, as the home stretch is the clearance to General Oliver's compound, made complicated by his personal guard of veteran Rangers and additional heavy troopers. Power cut or not, a minigun is a minigun, and it doesn't take a heap of marksmanship skills to spray into the darkness at 3,000 rounds per minute. Aware the Rangers are seconds away from breaching, the NCR begin harassing fire on the entry point, likely understanding that the threshold to power plant 4 is their most offendable choke point. The Rangers go heavy with the flashbangs and frag grenades through the breach, and make entry to power plant 4. Like the previous rooms, one platoon first secures a base of fire on the first floor, while the other clears along the long side of the room, in this case fighting their way up the western stairwell to occupy the upper balcony. This movement is not without opposition, and the NCR engage the fleeting Rangers through the darkness, likely inflicting casualties as they dash for safety. But with the upper floors secured, the Rangers can now repeat their cheese strat from The Rock and rain fire onto the NCR trapped on the ground floor. Though the less armoured veterans are easily downed by small arms fire, the minigun wielding heavy is more resilient, and hoses the upper levels, aiming through tracer fire and instinctive shooting, sending the Rangers diving for cover. Eventually the big gun goes silent to reload, and the Rangers take the opportunity to dump fragmentation grenades and machine gun fire on the power armoured hulks. With the heavy troopers down, the remaining NCR are dispatched in short order as the remainder of the room is cleared, and with the power plant secured, the Rangers make their breach on General Oliver's compound. What happens next depends entirely on him. If he emerges from the smoke with big iron blazing and a bad attitude, it will be readjusted accordingly. But if he yields to the Rangers, he'll be detained and processed as a prisoner of war. With the general in their custody, the assault force returns to the surface, along with any other NCR prisoners and friendly casualties, and 1 and 2 platoon filter back into security positions once they get topside. General Oliver is a prideful and stubborn man, and like in the game, initially refuses any offer of surrender, but having seen firsthand the capabilities of the Rangers, he realizes he's no longer up against ragtag wasteland marauders. So the Ranger Company commander passes his high-level speech check and compels the general to order his remaining troops to surrender. With the NCR stood down, the objective and surrounding area is secure, and Caesar's Legion can move into takeover security responsibilities of the Hoover Dam, allowing the Rangers to exfil on foot and refit to fight for the next raid. If you've made it this far, thank you for the gift of your time.